just a minute. Well, welcome back on such a beautiful, cold and rainy evening here in Nairobi. Tonight we want to, of course, focus on the tourism industry, and I'm joined by Andreas Fluckiger. Did I get it right?
Well, pretty much, yes.
I think I need to go to school to learn how to pronounce your name. He is the general manager for Movenpick Hotel and Residencies here in Nairobi. This is one of the newest establishments in the city. Thank you so much, Andrea, for joining us here. When you look at those figures, are you convinced that you're in the right place for business?
We're definitely in the right place for business. As you can see, the numbers are increasing, and now, as we have put the election year behind us, there is a strong focus on and hope that the numbers will be further increasing.
Yes. You've been around for 21 months, that's what you're telling me, yes. And you came from Saudi Arabia.
That's correct.
And obviously Saudi Arabia is a bigger market, is a richer market than Kenya. What differences are you seeing?
It's really very different because Saudi Arabia, as it's quite restricted for travelers, so there's a lot of, the main part is domestic tourism besides the religious tourism. Then of course there's business, which is strictly related to business. Kenya in that sense is obviously very easy to enter the country. Many nations can get visa on arrival, so that brings with it that it's very easy to travel to Kenya and as such to come and explore the country.
When you decided, to focus on the East African market and you settled on Kenya, what clientele were you targeting? Were you targeting holidaymakers, transit, or who?
Well, being in Nairobi, we're really focusing on business travelers, and specifically for our hotel, we're looking at what we call the MICE business, which is meeting, incentive, conference and exhibition business, as our hotel has over 2,500 square meters of meeting and event space. So this will be the core market that we will be focusing on.
And you started operations in last month, actually.
Yes.
When the rains were kicking in and the roads are in a horrible state, how has this made your business?
Well, you can see obviously when there are events happening, we've been quite lucky to, quite from the start, been able to host several events at the hotel. So the event should start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you see people trailing in 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, because of the delays caused by weather.
Because of the weather?
Yes, because of the weather.
If you were given an opportunity to market this country, what would be a selling point?
It's people.
The people?
Yes, yes.
Definitely. Not even the wildlife?
No, I would really, it's people, because you can have beautiful sceneries, you can have wildlife, you can have so many offerings. If you're not properly welcome, people wouldn't go there. And what I've experienced in those last 21 months in Kenya is that Kenyan people are very friendly, they're very welcoming, and this is what makes you go to a country, and that's also what makes you come back to a country. So it's people.
Let's now turn our focus now on to the industry. For a country, like Kenya, with a population of almost 47 million people, attracting 1.5 million visitors on an annual basis, that of course is a serious underperformance. When you compare it with a country like Morocco, which attracts almost 12 million visitors a year, what is wrong with us?
In order to, well, if you're comparing with Morocco, Morocco is first of all very close to Europe, so there is a big feeder market there. It also has a lot to do with connectivity in terms of flights. Of course, the more flights, the cheaper they are, the easier you will be able to attract people. Direct flights from, let's say, Europe, there's not that many, and as such, it's also more expensive. Plus also, I mean, when people come to Kenya, of course, the main reason is wildlife. Then going to the various parks, it's quite a costly exercise, especially if you come with a family. So it is not something that you would say, okay, you know, spontaneously, let's spend a few days in Kenya and visit Masai Mara, whereas a country like Morocco, you could say from Europe, let's make a long weekend in Marrakesh and explore the bazaar, etc. So that it has a lot to do with that. It's geographical location, the connectivity, so that has its impact. Yes.
Is it high time, you know, that we think about our branding strategy? Because the tourism industry in Kenya, you know, has been around for more than 85 years, and our key selling point has been wildlife, beaches and sand. Obviously you can access this elsewhere, but as you were saying, do we have that unique product that we can sell to the world which you cannot access it elsewhere?
I think Kenya should or could do more in order to promote itself as a destination, because as you say, I mean, beach and sun, there's a lot of countries which have the same and much closer to many feeder markets. The wildlife, also there is a strong competition, and I think that it's really important to go out and project itself as a popular destination. Of course, the political issues which happened over the past few years didn't help, I think, because obviously a lot of travelers more and more looking at the safety and security. And as much as Kenya is a very safe country, but it's enough that people read something about in the news about a small thing, which is really nothing big, and then, oh, it's a dangerous place, let's go somewhere else.
As a manager and you know, as somebody who, you know, has traveled to very many countries, you know, managing or operating within the hospitality industry, when you receive phone calls, you know, from your friends, from your peers and from your colleagues in the industry, what is one of their biggest concern about the Kenyan market?
To generate more volume, really, to get in more visitors into the country. That's the biggest concern that we have. Because as general managers of the various hotels in Nairobi, we talk to each other because we sit in the same situation. So we also meet once a month to see what can we do together to help actually each other to grow the market and create more awareness about Kenya.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you were coming into a market, you know, where bed occupancy rate in 2017 was 30.2%. Honestly, is there business here?
Business is there, but again, it goes back to promote the country. And one thing now, in our case, we have built these large meeting and event spaces, which will help to attract larger conferences, because Nairobi needs to establish itself as a destination for large international conferences and congresses. And for that, of course, you need a certain amount of rooms in the city, so that if you have that large conference, you could accommodate all those people. So the potential is there, but again, a lot goes back to market the country, the destination out there.
But when you look at Nairobi, you know, a city of about almost 5 million people, you know, by day, when you look at the kind of infrastructure that we have here, is it enough to bring or to sustain huge conference meetings?
You can definitely, with what there is today, you can make a start. And because it's, you know, no destination starts big. You start small, and then you keep on growing as you establish yourself. So with what there is today in the market, we definitely can host a certain size of international conferences and congresses. And once this gets known, you spread the word, and then you can keep on growing as such.
You're from Switzerland, and you don't have wildlife, like lions, giraffes, and all these. Yet, you have a very rich history, you know, of watchmaking, you know, of chocolate and cheese making, which of course attract a lot of business in terms of billions of dollars. Do you see one area that Kenya would focus much on, you know, that would generate a lot of revenue?
I think it's really banking on its nature and its wildlife, because that's as much as it's not the only country with the same wildlife, but there is a uniqueness. You have the area around Mount Kenya, you have Turkana. There's a lot of different areas that can be visited, and I think Kenya shouldn't really invent something different, but really focus on what there is and build on that.
You know, you're from Europe, and in Europe, almost every other day they have elections, you know, mayoral elections, local elections. But here in Kenya, when we have elections, you realize that, you know, arrival numbers will somehow dip by a certain margin. Mm-hmm. How can we cure this challenge that we have?
This is a lot about the perception that what people who don't know the country, who maybe also don't know the continent, would get. And it goes back to safety and security. Of course, then when elections are, then sometimes in the media, it's really being projected in an exaggerated way, mm-hmm. which then keeps people away from traveling to a certain country.
How would you deal with this?
That's a big question. How to deal with that? Well, I think obviously it starts from the top on how this is being managed, I would say, because as we could see last year, it had obviously a negative impact, even though the numbers were growing as opposed to 2016, but it had a negative impact, and obviously as a traveler, as a visitor, as an investor, if you see that the country is almost paralyzed because of an election, then maybe you see, okay, what alternatives do I have?
Look at, for example, Brazil. I mean, it has one of the highest crime rates in the world, even Mexico. And let's, for example, you know, talk about the capital city, Brasilia. Mm-hmm. You know, every year they receive to the upwards of about 5 million visitors. Yet we know that you're more likely to die in Brasilia than you are here in Kenya. Yet they continue to receive all these visitors. I mean, what are we not doing right?
Maybe there should be a carnival in Kenya.
Oh, maybe. We should have a carnival, yeah.
Maybe this is something we could invent and bring more people. No, joke aside. I mean, Brazil, and I've been to Brazil. I've visited the country. I traveled around, and this it's quite different in one way, but in the other way as well. It's obviously the beaches of Rio de Janeiro are attracting a lot of people, but also nature again. Mm-hmm. So it's and Brazil has been, I think, doing more in promoting itself, and then even though we said jokingly we should bring the carnival, but mm-hmm. definitely the carnival as a world famous event has helped a lot to attract a lot of people to a country like Brazil.
Mm-hmm. So, in your own opinion, as we wind up this interview, if you were to advise the government and policymakers, you know, who are watching us tonight, mm-hmm. on how to market and to bring more numbers into this country, what would you tell them?
I would again first start about the people, because that is really unique. I really have to say, mm-hmm. again, the friendliness, the openness of the Kenyan people, and then, of course, bring in the wildlife, which is, even though, again, it's not the only country, but it's just beautiful.
Good. Andrea, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight here. And of course, we look forward to having you again in the future.
Thank you very much, Brian.
And all the best.
Thank you very much.
Andreas Fluckiger is the General Manager for Movenpick Hotel and Residencies here in Nairobi, joining us here tonight to give us his thoughts on how, as a country, we can improve tourist arrivals and, of course, the tourism industry here in Kenya. Well, just a minute.